and welcome to the ACT Brown Bag Lunch Conference Call. Following today's presentations, there will be formal question and answer sessions. At that time, if you have a question, you may press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. At the request of the company, this conference is being recorded. Should you have any objections, you may disconnect. I will now turn the conference over to Mr. Jared Liu. Sir, you may begin.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for being here today. This is the webcast on operating a nursery, community garden, or arboretum. Today we're going to learn more about the challenges of site management, the business assumptions that sustain operations, and how these sites are used to enhance public education and outreach. Also want to thank our sponsors for today, the Home Depot Foundation and the U.S. Forest Service. Thanks very much. The order of operation today is we'll have Mike Bradshaw present, then there will be questions and answer session, and for that all the phone lines will be open, and you can either ask the question directly yourself or you can type it into the question manager online and I'll come on the line and ask the question for you. Then all the lines will be muted. We'll have Glenda present, and then after that it will be questions and answers for the remainder of the session, and we'll end promptly with an hour left. With that, I want to thank our two presenters for being here today. We have Mike Bradshaw, who's the Interim Executive Director at the Texas Trees Foundation in Dallas. He's a Texas A&M graduate in landscape architecture with over 30 years of experience in landscape design, planning, and landscape construction and landscape maintenance. He is a past president of the Texas Urban Forestry Council and a past president of the Alliance for Community Trees. Glenda Daniel is the Urban Greening Director at Open Lands in Chicago. She has extensive experience in conservation, including 6 years as the Executive Director of Lake Michigan Federation. She is the author of Dune Country, a Naturalist Guide to the Indiana Dunes, The North Woods, a Sierra Club Naturalist Guide, and several hiking books. I think they'll give an excellent overview of nurseries, community gardens, and arboretums. I do want to make one side note. Many of you are probably familiar that the National Tree Trust for a long time had a program providing funds to groups to start nurseries, and I did seek to have some representation from them, and originally Forest Relief Missouri was going to present, and they have a very established program there with the old NTT model, but they had to step away at the last moment because of some staff changes. So sorry I couldn't have them on the line, but I will have more information about them and some of the other NTT models in the resource list I provide afterwards, and I'll send everyone the link for that within the week, along with the recording of this session. Okay, so with that, I will turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Jared. You bring up the National Tree Trust model. We are actually the original NTT model, so if you're within the sound of my voice, you'll get a little bit of that. We took that program and modified it. George Cates, the director of the National Tree Trust at that time, and I graduated from the same high school, not the same year. He is much, much older than me. But he and I got to talking about opportunities of creating a growing center. They called it a regional grow-out station, and that was the beginning of all of that. A little background into the foundation. We were chartered in 1982. We worked primarily within the downtown Dallas area, expanded to the Dallas city limits, eventually expanded to the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area, and now we cover a 29-county area of north central Texas. We have two primary programs in our focus for the foundation. One is our Trees for Texas program, which, like probably most of you, we provide trees for planting on public property. What is unique about us is that we actually grow our own inventory of trees, and I'll be talking about that with our urban tree farm projects. The other thing that we have is a shadekeeper program that we, like most good nonprofit managers, copied from many different groups around the country, wrote it specifically for north central Texas, and then I at one time shared it with everyone across the nation. In the beginning, Trammell Crow, and that name may be familiar with some. Mr. Crow was very instrumental in the 1990 Farm Bill and was instrumental in the establishment of the National Tree Trust. Mr. Crow remains our chair emeritus, although his health is very poor. We used to acquire trees from Mr. Crow's nursery, and seeing the writing on the wall that as he got older and the interest of the family would be more diminished, we sought an opportunity to create our own inventory, not be reliant on anyone else. So what we did was we formed an alliance, as most good nonprofits do. We went to our local utility company, which is TXU. We asked them for money, and they were gracious enough to give it to us. In fact, they have given us all the money that we've ever asked for. However, we needed a location. Our original grow-out station was too small and in an area of town that was particularly unsafe. So we went to a regional community college. Dallas has one of the larger community college districts in the country, and we went and spoke to the administration at Richland College, made a full presentation to them. They were willing to give us a 3-acre site immediately adjacent to their horticulture department. In fact, Richland has the only horticulture department in the county. We staked off the 3 acres with the idea that we would create a pot-in-pot nursery with a fully automated irrigation system. The slide that you are seeing, if you are having access to the internet, is our before photograph. We came in with the herbicide and organic gardeners. We are not. We nuked it all with Roundup, killed all the grass off. This is the before picture, and this is the after picture. We did all of this in a single day. We had 362 volunteers from TXU and various groups that we had worked with in the past. In that day, we transplanted 3,850 trees of 8 different species. We are now up to about 12. We had pre-augured the holes. Let me clarify my comment earlier of doing it all in one day. All of the holes were pre-augured. We set all of the pots. We spread 3 acres of ground cloth and stretched 14,000 feet of irrigation tubing and to establish the irrigation line. Again, it's totally automated with regard to the irrigation system. We have it's all battery operated using the latest irrigation, drip irrigation technology. The next slide, a little bit more of an aerial view. This was the day after we had done the planting. This was on the original planting was July the 13th of 2002. Since this time, we have expanded the nursery to approximately 4.5 acres. We now have an area where we can grow our own seedlings. We have volunteers that come in once a month. The third Saturday of the month is volunteer work day at our tree farm. I taught as an adjunct in the horticulture department the building construction class, or the landscape construction class, so my class has built all the infrastructure. Our volunteers come in. Every February we plant between 12,000 and 21,000 bare root seedlings into 2-gallon containers, grow them for a year, bump them into 5-gallon containers, grow them for a year, bump them into 10-gallon containers to represent our inventory at our farm, at the TXU Urban Tree Farm at Richland College. We have since gone with a second location where we are growing 20-gallon trees. We can get to that fully mature 20-gallon container in another year. So from a bare root seedling with a cost of about 26.5 to 35 cents a piece, we produce a product, a nursery product that we sell as a 10-gallon for $35 for, again, consumption by anyone on public property. A 20-gallon tree we sell for $70. The funds that we raise from this sustains our program. We are close to break even on the tree farms. In terms of identification and promotion of the project, each of our trees leaves with a TXU tag on it. And if you can read the slide, it says, "This tree lovingly transplanted by," and a place for someone or a sponsor individual to sign their name. This is a more recent photograph. This was approximately a year later. You'll note that in addition to the trees that are in the pots in the ground, we have now almost doubled our production by putting containers above ground in between the pots that are actually in the ground. We have now gone from 3,850 trees to 7,000 trees that we can produce in 1 year. And again, at $35 a tree, that's a considerable amount of revenue for the organization. Last slide here gives you a little bit of an idea of the irrigation system. It's all drip. We put 2 gallons of water per hour on each one of these trees, and depending on the season, right now we're running the system about 3 times a day. To give you an idea, we raised from TXU $143,000. We came back the next year, asked for another $44,000. So the cost of the program sponsored by TXU was $187,000. We have a crew or a staff of 5 part-time students. We use students from the horticulture program as either interns or just part-time help. We are in search of a urban tree farm manager at this point, but it has been a very successful program for us, and again, to the point that we have expanded it to a now 10-acre facility, a separate facility that is sponsored by Texas Instruments. It's near their campus. It's an old remote parking lot of theirs, and we have raised approximately $350,000 for that new facility. The challenges of the site, if I can go into a little bit of detail before Jared cuts me off. The black plastic that you see, or the ground cloth, is not a deterrent in any way. It obviously keeps the weeds down. Usually the first question I get is it too hot? Well, actually the root system loves a warmer environment, so the black plastic actually keeps the soil temperature a little bit warmer. We get more growth out of these trees that are in the ground than we do the ones that are above the ground. Weeds are an issue. Even though we have the ground cloth, we continually battle weeds. We continually are challenged with the need for volunteers. We never know from Saturday to Saturday whether we're going to have 30 or 300 people show up. We put them all to work. The irrigation system is checked twice a week, typically on Monday and on Friday. We are on a community college campus, so you may question vandalism. We have actually lost 2 trees from this location in the 5 years, almost 5.5 years that we have operated it. A great success story. The community college uses it as an outdoor learning center. We use it for our volunteers. When we do training for our volunteers, we use this as a resource to train our volunteers on trees. And we also host a lot of scout and school-age functions at this location. Again, I mentioned that we have about 12 different species, all native or adapted species to north central Texas, and it has been an incredibly successful program for us. Jared, I could scatter shoot for another 3 hours, so let me open it up. If it's Q&A time now, why don't we do that, and I'll answer a few, and then we'll go to the next program.
Sounds great. Thanks. If the operator can open all the lines, and anyone who would like to ask a question, jump on in, and if you'd like to ask it electronically, feel free to type that in, and I'll ask it for you.
Thank you. If you have a question, you may press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. If you're using speaker equipment, you may need to pick up the handset before pressing star 1. You will be prompted to record your name. If you wish to cancel your question, you may press star 2. Once again, that is star 1 if you have a question, and star 2 to cancel. One moment, please, while the questions register.
Jared, do you and I still maintain an open microphone here?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'll start off with the first question. I had talked some with Dave Flanagan, who had previously been at Kaboom, and he had mentioned that one of the key partnerships from his perspective was the municipality. But in general, it was a partnership for land, because he said, more than anything, they looked for groups that had maintenance and volunteers and would be sustainable, but they started with finding someone who could donate the land. In your experience, has that been the case, Mike?
The toughest challenge was a place to put a nursery large enough to be efficient. The community college made sense for us in several different perspectives. Land was one, security was another. The other thing that was thrown in, you can imagine how much water we use. The community college picks up the tab on our utility bill, so that's a good thing. In the case of our second farm, which I'm not highlighting today, Texas Instruments had a 10-acre parking lot that was remote from their main campus, and they were doing nothing with it. So we identified that as a target, went and approached them, and they, after, 3 weeks, made the decision to let us have it on a 10-year lease for $1 a year.
Okay. We have another question. Can you talk about how you market the tree sales, and who's your audience?
We have a full-time marketing director. Margie Webb goes out and talks to primarily municipalities and school districts. When I first started with the foundation in '92, we worked about 95% with neighborhood associations. Now, about 95% of our work is municipalities and school districts. In fact, the reason for going to a second facility where we could grow 20-gallon trees was to reach the 2-inch caliper threshold that most municipalities have as a minimum tree size. So we do a considerable amount of work through our local council of governments to identify those municipalities and school districts that could be partners.
Okay, we have a technical question. What potting medium are you using?
We have gone through about 4 different materials. The one that we have found the best is about 15% native loam, and the rest is a compost that we purchased from a municipality north of Dallas in Plano, pure. So 85% compost, 15% loam to give it a little bulk and a little weight, and then we mulch all of the trees. Again, weeds have been an issue, so we now mulch all of the trees to minimize the weed growth through the pot.
And as a follow-up question, I think you've started to answer this. Where does the potting soil come from? How much does it cost, and who pays for it?
We raise the farm is practically sustainable. The cost of the soil is a part of our annual budget. The soil runs us around $30 a yard, and we will go through approximately 400 to 600 yards a year at our 2 facilities. Okay.
Has there been any criticism or perception issues from the Nursery and Landscape Association?
No, not at all. Again, we're an older organization. This is our 25th year, and we have been doing the tree thing since very, very aggressively since 1989. In that time, we planted about 140,000 trees. Because we limit the trees to public property only, we really have no negative press from either the nursery industry or any other groups for that matter. In fact, in most cases, we consider them partners. Anytime we have gone into a neighborhood to plant trees on public property, there has been an increase in nursery business, if you will, by those neighbors that participated or that stood by and watched their neighbors do work. An increase in tree purchases for the neighborhood for private property.
Here's a compliment and a question. An attendee says, "It's such an amazing program. What would you say is the minimum land needed to start such a self-sustaining nursery?"
Our original goal was 3 acres. I don't think I would do another one for fewer than 5 acres, simply because you need those kind of numbers to make it sustainable. To give you an idea, the $35 for a 10-gallon tree is 60% of the wholesale value of the tree. If I was to go out, if anyone was to go out and buy a 10-gallon live oak, for example, from an area nursery, they'd have to pay around $47.50 to $55 a tree. At $35, it's the incentive that we feel we need for people to purchase a tree that they'll never actually own.
Okay. Next question is, what is the average number of trees per acre produced, and what is the time from seeding to 2-inch caliper?
Well, we don't propagate seeds. We actually buy bare root seedlings that are 1.5 years old. So we go to nurseries in the area that specialize in bare root seedlings. From that point to a mature 10-gallon tree is 3 full growing seasons. So if we plant in February of year 1, we have a mature 10-gallon tree by October, November of year 3. And again, at a cost of somewhere between 26.5 to 35 cents a tree, depending on the species. Was there? I can't remember if there was another part of that question.
Was the average number of trees per acre produced?
Oh, that's right. Well, again, we have about 52,000 trees in production. We have to have that in order to produce the 13,000 or so trees per year that we are able to produce now. Eventually, our total production will be 16,200 trees. If I take the 7,000 trees that I have at our TXU farm and divide it by the 4.5 acres, you can do the math. I don't have a calculator on me, but originally we looked at a density of around 1,700 trees per acre. I think we're a little bit over that, but recall that about 1.5 acres of that is dedicated to storage, infrastructure, and the 2-gallon and 5-gallon seedlings and saplings that grow into our 10-gallon facilities. If with the slide that's up, just as a follow-up, these rows are 8 feet wide, and the trees are in the ground on 4-foot centers. So that will give you an idea of the density.
All right. Are you having any problem with girdling roots?
Every time we transplant a tree, we root prune. We make sure that volunteers plant them at the proper height. We do captain's training on the Thursday before a Saturday event. And so those captains know what to look for in terms of whatever issues we may be dealing with. Girdling roots certainly a problem in any kind of a container-grown facility, but we deal with that with systematic and mandatory root pruning.
And why do you only operate on public lands?
It's our business. We will not provide trees for private property, because then we get into a political issue like someone asked about before with the local nursery industry. We would be unfairly competing with the nursery if we let anybody buy our trees at 60% wholesale.
So you never do tree sales to the public?
We do tree sales to the public as long, in other words, we will sell our trees to a neighborhood group, but those trees have to be planted on a public right-of-way.
Okay. And how do you maintain volunteers?
Oh, we have now an extensive volunteer base. We have all of the local colleges, all of the community colleges. We've got neighborhood groups and scouts, and we send a postcard out once a month with the 2 dates of the month that are our volunteer days, and we just wait for the people to show up.
Okay, fantastic. If you have other questions for Mike, hang on to those or type them in, and I can get to them for you later. We will turn it over to Glenda now to go more into community gardens and arboretums.
Pardon the interruption. Were you taking questions from the audio?
Oh, yeah. Do you have questions?
Yes, we have a question from Paul Smith.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's Paul. How are you?
Hey, Paul.
I got in here a little bit late. Maybe you covered this. I don't know. But site work. How much site work was involved, and how much cost and time was involved with that? Did you have to do any surveying, drainage work, grading work, stuff like that?
Our timeline was so tight, we did not do any grading work. As luck would have it, in the one depression that we ended up with naturally on the site, that's where we planted all of our bur oak and ball cypress. So we have left them there. Just helps with our irrigation. Drainage is an issue and one that you would need to be aware of. But on this particular farm, we spent $0 on grading or site work.
So you're not running into any problems then with that?
None.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Next we have Aaron Kingsley.
Yeah, actually I already had my question answered, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I show no further questions.
Great. We'll turn it over to Glenda.
Thank you. This is Glenda Daniel from Open Lands, and our Open Lands is an organization that has a broader mission than trees overall. We operate mainly in the six-county metropolitan area, although we have some around Chicago, although we have some programs that go as far out as 14 counties, and our mission is to protect green space, enhance green space, anything, carrying the message that green infrastructure is as important as gray infrastructure in an urban area in all kinds of ways. And my division is education and community outreach mainly. It's just changed from being urban greening, and until recently we did everything. Our program was within the city of Chicago. And that our program includes two programs I'll talk about today: neighborhood open space planning, which includes community gardens, and our tree keeper program. And then we have a brand new arboretum. So I will, of course, start with successes. This is a very different kind of presentation than Mike's. The things I'll concentrate on are different, although some of the issues are the same. We've established more than 50 community and school gardens in the last 12 years that I've been here. And those tend to be vacant lot size gardens, 125 by 125 feet all over the city. And we've only lost two, but the staff itself, my staff, provides very little ongoing maintenance, so that we have to incorporate that community organizing and training to community groups to take care of these spaces. Our community arboretum is different. It's brand new. It's just a year old, and so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it, too, has evolved from and benefits from our community garden model. So we have a thing called neighborhood open space planning. That means that we work on a neighborhood level. Now, a neighborhood in Chicago can be 50,000 people, so neighborhoods are big. But we try to work with each neighborhood, and they're mostly inner-city neighborhoods that don't have many open space amenities. And we try to work with the leaders in that neighborhood to see where they want open space kept permanently open. And we helped establish a separate nonprofit in Chicago that's funded by the city and other public agencies that will take title, permanent title to open space. That organization is called Neighbor Space. I serve on its board. And so that once we designate land as a community garden or our new arboretum, it has permanent protection, so nobody can develop it, which is one of our developers are one of our challenges. So within the neighborhood open space plans, we have work about a year to get people to identify what land in their neighborhood they want kept permanently open, and then we work once as each plot is identified, we work with community to. We don't wait till the whole plan's done, but we work with local block clubs, etc., to design and install each garden and make sure that people understand the amount of work involved and get them to list all the tasks and set up a mechanism for assigning the work. I wanted to talk right away about the volunteer system. The primary group of volunteers, of course, are the community, the people who live around each site. So the community group are the primary volunteers, and each site has a local manager. But we've discovered over the years that you can't just depend on that, because you tend to have 3 or 4 people who do all the work. And so we've set up a system of outside volunteers who are used on a regular basis. Of course, we use groups like Chicago Cares, City Year, these big organizations that draw in corporate people to do volunteer days that have 25 to 30 people. And then we have our own programs, our Tree Keepers, which is our urban forestry program. We have seven Saturday course twice a year, and it's very cheap. It's like $80 for the whole course, and people are required to put in 24 hours minimum a year volunteer work, and they usually do a lot more than that. And then we have another class that's called Building Urban Gardens. It's an organic gardening survey course, not about vegetables just, but all kinds of gardening. And we also have a volunteer component to that. And then we have, in the summer, we hire teenagers, 3 crews of teenagers in different neighborhoods, 3 different neighborhoods, who work 20 hours a week for 8 weeks to help the community gardeners and the other, the tree keepers, etc., with their green spaces. And then we also provide some tutoring and take them on field trips, etc. And then we hire people periodically to do hardscape installation and the more technical jobs. I want to build up to the Arboretum, because I know I don't want to run out of time before I do that. Our challenges to all of these green spaces are keeping the gardens going long-term, sustainability. People move away, lose interest, get older, etc. And so we try to have a community-wide support group in each neighborhood that's either already there or we help set it up, and the gardeners support each other. And we also provide infusions of little funding every year for people to do new things with their gardens, and we have a good relationship with foundations, corporations, garden clubs, etc. And another challenge is development. Chicago, even in the poorest neighborhoods, has now gotten to be a hot spot for housing development, and we certainly don't want to discourage housing development, but it's hard to get developers to recognize that a garden in the middle of their, set of rows of houses on the street actually helps their property values. And it used to be really easy to get the alderman to agree to set aside and approve a site for neighbor space for permanent protection, but now that's getting a little harder. And scheduling work days. We do have all of our gardeners schedule work days at the beginning of the season, and then we match up the outside volunteers with the gardener schedules. We have an e-letter that goes out. We also have a green teacher network of, several hundred schools in the area with teachers that have school gardens, and that each of those schools has a set of a team that keeps their garden going. And our new community arboretum, I'll just jump to that. It's a different set of issues. It's the first time that we've set out to manage a physical site long term. And we want it to really look professional and not quite so homemade. And we also can't just have it managed by volunteers, because we have to be able to depend on it being maintained and function as a neighborhood tree museum and education center with interpretive signs and teachable points about in an accessible pathway, and guided as well as self-guiding tours. So this one's a combination of staffed and volunteer. Our tree keepers do serve as volunteer guides for special tours. And we're focusing on hardy urban trees. So we have different little lessons of the interpretive signs have to do with how don't volcano mulch, and how to take care, how to water, how to care for trees, which trees work best in the city and which don't. We have different kinds. We have bare root versus balled and burlap. We have certain experiments going on about, do some of these grow faster than others? And our little arboretum is a former community garden. It's very small compared to what Mike talked about. It's 625 feet square. It was a former community garden that was 5 adjacent lots. And we built on the community garden network we had in that neighborhood, and we have an advisory committee of the residents who live around there, and we pay a local resident to keep it mowed, etc. And we have a local long-time partner from a local group that is the site manager to just make sure that physically it stays okay. Vandalism has never been a big problem, even though these are neighborhoods with lots of gangbangers, etc., because it has such strong local support. But we worry about that, of course. And we're well underway with a curriculum that uses urban trees, as we've long used school gardens to teach basic concepts in language arts, history, science, math, ecology, etc., as well as just an understanding of urban trees and how to take care of them. And we have an advisory committee already in place from our Green Teacher Network and our tree experts that are pilot testing this program. So I guess that's my basic presentation if people want to start asking questions.
Great. Thanks, Glenda. And the operator, if you can unmute the lines, please.
Once again, that is *1 if you have a question.
And I'll start, Glenda. Prior to the session, people had emailed me who were particularly interested in the Arboretum aspect, and they wanted to hear as much as possible on how to establish a cost-effective maintenance program for an Arboretum.
Well, we haven't raised as much as we need for this. So this is so new that we're really just getting started. So we really just have, so far we have fairly low cost. The real cost is when we really install our major permanent path, etc. And right now we just hire neighborhood people to keep it mowed and to water and to make sure that the trees are mulched when we don't have the in between volunteer days and stuff, and it's fairly inexpensive. I think the real cost long term is it's going to be finishing the installation. This is oddly a site that has too many trees. We really need to take some out and move them to other sites around the city. So, we may discover maintenance costs that we don't know yet, but our main concern right now is that finishing up that initial installation and making it more professional than it is now. And then we will use a combination of volunteers on the regularly scheduled work days and neighborhood people who work fairly inexpensively but really want to stay engaged with the site to do the watering and the general maintenance.
Any questions through the operator?
I'm showing no questions in queue at this time.
Okay. Glenda, can you talk more about the multi-divisional curriculum aspect? I know there's a lot out there for curriculum in science, but I noticed that you also had curriculum crossing over with social studies and language arts, and I think that's fairly unique.
Right. We have done this for years. We know that there are lots of, we did a pretty thorough literature search. We know that there are lots of programs out there for even just teaching about trees and how to care for them, and certainly there are tons of science things. And so we've tried to fill the gaps, but we already have had a program for years where we use school gardens as laboratories for teaching all the subjects that are required by the state and each city for learning standards, so that you can use the outdoor garden or the outdoor arboretum in this case to teach the things that are required each year for math. We focused a lot more on history and social studies so it's not just about the trees, but it's using the trees to teach other things about, from the age of the trees, different things that were going on in Illinois when that tree was planted, and the neighborhood history, and teaching kids to do oral histories of the community leaders, and nutrition. And there's a big, obesity problem in the country, and so we also use this new curriculum. It has some things about nutrition and healthy and fitness and so on that haven't been in the previous curricula that we've had. So we really are trying to, we use the things that are already out there for really just teaching about trees, although our guided tours and our self-guiding, our signs do teach about the trees themselves. But really, it's more, kids learn more when they can get out, move around, have a practical thing to look at. It's more exciting. And in Chicago, I think this is true a lot of other places, you don't have recess anymore. And so the only time kids get to get outdoors is if they can connect it to a class.
And preschoolers are going to lose their nap time soon, right?
Get those preschoolers out there mulching, right?
All right, we have a question. Can you elaborate on success in your summer program and how that is structured?
The summer program, you mean the teenagers? Is that what was meant?
I'm not sure.
Well, I'll start with that. We hire 24 teenagers in the summer, working half-time for 8 weeks, plus a little training period in the spring. And that's we do that in 3 different neighborhoods, and we hire a crew leader. Often the crew leader is an adult from that neighborhood. Occasionally we find a fairly young college graduate that everybody has to have some experience managing youth. That's the most important thing, even more important than their knowledge of gardening. And then we have several foundations that support youth programs, and so we teach the kids. We have 3 Saturdays at the end of the school session where we teach them basics of biology and horticulture and the plant knowledge, as well as job readiness, etc. And then they are chosen by they are interviewed and screened. They're picked by the crew leaders. So there are people. It's been going on now 6 or 7 years. So kids, we always have a waiting list of people to apply, and the crew leaders get references, and we try to make sure these are kids from very poor neighborhoods, pretty tough neighborhoods, and we make sure we get kids who are going to stick with us all summer, and we've had pretty good luck with that. And then as the summer goes along, we provide enrichment things too, because we want the older community gardeners and our Arboretum to have some assistance from young, healthy, kids, but also we want this to do something for the kids. So we have speakers come in talking to them about college. We take them on field trips to Arboretum, nature centers, etc. The Department of Planning to hear that kind of job in the future relates to what they're doing. And I teach a writing workshop with them as we go along, because high school kids in Chicago public schools are amazingly bad at writing and public speaking, so we try to prepare them for those things. And it's worked really well. Kids often want to apply again the next year.
And as a follow-up question to that, attendees would like to hear more about the volunteer aspect and how you keep them engaged. And this will go first to Glenda and then to Mike too, since both programs are so labor intensive. But for instance, do you use anything like annual awards, banquets, volunteer recognition? How do you get them to stick around and return, since attrition is generally so high in these groups?
We don't have anything like that. I mean, we have just very occasionally done a volunteer recognition. I think the social aspect keeps it going. Tree keepers especially. Our tree keepers now, every tree keeper gets, when they graduate, they get a badge with their name and a number on it. And we have work days somewhere in the city almost every weekend all year, even in the winter in Chicago. And people can decide to stake out an area near where they live, and they lead work days in their own neighborhood, and then the tree keepers from other neighborhoods will come and help them. So they're already engaged with their community, and they get to know each other, and they tend to be pretty, they're activist people. And I'm always in any kind of meeting I'm in where there's something else going on about open space in the city or a new issue, and when people go around and introduce themselves, if there's a tree keeper in the audience, they always say, "I'm tree keeper so-and-so, number so-and-so." So there's really a strong identity, and just that and the fact that they all get to know each other, and people get to know each other from neighborhoods all around the city that would never, different ethnic groups, etc., that would never normally get to know each other, has turned out to be really strong incentive. And that fact that we send them a mailing every month by snail mail as well as an email letter that lets them know all the choices of work days they have, so that anytime people want to do something, there's always some place to go that's supervised. And that the fact that they can go to areas of the city that are unfamiliar to them and know there will be somebody there, it'll be safe. They can explore. We've had very little attrition.
Mike, would you like to also address strategies for re-engaging or engaging volunteers?
We just kind of fertilize the field. We keep in touch with sorority and fraternity leaders. We have ongoing relationships with. We get a lot of volunteers from private schools, and there are each of the private schools in our area have a community service coordinator, and so we only have to take her to lunch once a year, and we're in, and we see those groups probably 6 or 7 times a year.
Great. I do have a question for Mike. Do you put containers directly on concrete at the parking lot site?
It's actually an asphalt parking lot. It is a few degrees cooler than the shade cloth or the ground cloth that we use at our other facility. But yes, we put it directly on the asphalt. The nice thing, and the question that came up before was there a site work? Was there a site construction that had to be done? This was a parking lot that drains, so we already had that working for us. So it's worked very, very well. The only key there is in our second facility where we're on the asphalt is we have to pay particular attention to trees that blow over. So we have a fairly elaborate staking and guying system to hold the trees up.
Great. We'll go back to Glenda. It sounds like the poorer neighborhoods in Chicago are somewhat organized to begin with. Is that true?
Some of them are and some of them aren't. There always are. This community asset, we believe in looking for community assets. So it's true that there are lots of block clubs in the city. That's because Chicago's very political that way, and every aldermen are elected by ward, and so they already have block clubs organized all over the city. So that's a base we use, and there are often churches or other religious groups, and it's true, there really are often neighborhood organizations in place. Several times we've started a new organization that's just a garden club, in effect, or a greening group. But you're right, the poor neighborhoods in Chicago, way back to the Saul Alinsky days, are pretty organized already.
Any questions from the operator?
Yes, we have a question from Shreveport Green.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes?
Go ahead, you're on the line.
Thank you. Do you all charge, this is for Glenda, and do you all charge membership fees for your community garden for individual plots, or how do you assign those?
When people say community gardens, that's what they often mean, are those individual family plots. That's just never really developed in Chicago. When we say community gardens, we most of the time really mean passive pocket parks. And more of them are growing vegetables, but they almost always are just grown communally by the group and then shared in the neighborhood. So there are no charges, and we very seldom have those individual family garden plots.
Okay. Any other questions through the operator?
I'm showing no further questions.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions on this end, so we will go ahead and wrap it up early, which I think is always a success as well, because I promised y'all an hour, and we kept it to that. So I want to thank again Glenda and Mike for presenting at this session. I will also mention, if you do have any questions that strike you later, I can follow up with the presenters directly offline and email that out to everyone. So if you do have follow-up questions, email those to me. Also, if you can take a couple minutes and complete the survey, there are 4 questions. It should take you just a couple minutes. The survey link is up on your screen right now. If you can take a couple minutes to do that, that would really help us in further developing this program. The next session of the Brown Bag series is September. Again, the 3rd week. It's September 20th, and it will be on green roofs. So I hope you all can join us for that as well. I also want to thank our sponsors again, the Home Depot Foundation and the Forest Service, and thank you all for participating. All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in today's call. You may disconnect at this time. Thank you.